Alright guys, so right now you are looking down the business end of a 454 Big Block. This is the timing chain cover, crankshaft, and the oil pan. So we're going to go ahead and pull the oil pan and pull the timing chain cover and see what kind of shape this engine's in. Now, I've already pulled most of these bolts out, so the oil pan will come off with a couple bolts. Looks like we got a slurry in there of coolant and oil. So this truck's probably had a pretty hard life.
I'm going to show the camera. That looks delicious.
Right? Alright, so this truck is, as I expected, after looking at the casting numbers, 4-bolt main, high horsepower truck. So it was probably a high output in a 2500. So we're going to go ahead and switch our bit out right now and pull this timing chain cover off. And if we got oil and water in the oil pan, it probably had head gasket issues, which, judging by the shape these mating surfaces are in, definitely. Alright. Got the timing chain cover off. Looks like the gasket's definitely done for. It's pretty cooked. Timing chain's a little bit loose, but I mean this is a non-interference motor, so not super worried about that. This is likely going to get replaced. If we're going to do any kind of high horsepower build, it's going to be a double roller chain. So pretty good in the socket. Alright, pretty obvious how the top cam gear comes off. 3 bolts, cam gear comes off, timing chain comes off, and then we're left with the lower timing gear that is attached obviously to the crankshaft. So I'm going to get my trusty 3-jaw puller out, right? Fit it in, and whoops, cam gear comes off just like that. Good thing I won't be reusing this. Alright, so right now we are spilling gross oily coolant all over my garage floor, but you are taking a look at the lifter valley right here in the middle of our motor. So these are lifters, they ride on the camshaft, machined. These ones are pretty beat up. It was obvious this truck was overheated. They're a little discolored, so we go ahead and pull them out. Alright, so we got our lifters out, we got our timing chain off. I'm going to go ahead and get this camshaft pulled out. Get a grip on it. There we go. So we want to be really careful to not drag the camshaft on any of our cam journal bearings. Alright, so we can see the looks like the cam gear here for the distributor is in decent shape, but man, these cam lobes are worn. Very obvious this truck had 200+ thousand miles on it, which is what the odometer said on the donor truck, so no surprise there. This engine's likely never been apart. We'll take a look down the camshaft galley here. I don't see any scoring on the bearings. Probably get this line honed and then we'll be ready for our comp cams, high performance camshaft. Right now we're taking a look at the bottom of the engine. Got the oil pickup, oil pump. I'm going to go ahead and take the oil pump off so we can get started pulling these 4-bolt main caps off and hopefully get the crankshaft out of here and get this thing ready for a hot tank. So that is the oil pump bolt. It's removed, and then the oil pump should slide right out. As you can see, Chevy's oil pump is driven by the distributor shaft, turned by the camshaft. So no distributor, no oil pump. Put this off to the side for now. So, looking at oil galleys here, it doesn't look like any corrosion in the oil galleys. It's pretty smooth. So, we should be good to go. We'll pick up a refurbished oil pump, put that on when we're ready to rebuild the motor. Once again, we're looking at the bottom of this truck spec 454 Big Block. These are the 5 main bearing caps that hold the crank to the block. We're going to go ahead and remove these, and in the meantime, we'll talk a little bit about the crank. So first thing to do is break the torque on all of these bolts. Now, when the 454 was first introduced by Chevy, all 454s came with forged cranks and forged rods. As time moved on, as a cost-saving measure, they changed the crank over from being forged to being cast, which is unfortunately what we have here. You see little casting lines on the counterweights. We have cast crank. Now, that's not necessarily bad for me. It is externally balanced, so my plan was to replace it with a forged crank anyway. We could go to an internally balanced crank and eliminate the need for the very heavy harmonic balancer on the nose of the engine, which frees us up space for a supercharger pulley should we go that route. Now that we've broken the torque on these main cap bolts, I'm going to go ahead and pull the rod end bolts off and remove the rod ends so that when I get these main caps pulled off, we can remove the crank from the motor. It died. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these off in order and use my handy containers over here so I can keep the proper rod ends with the proper rod. I know a lot of people might like to use a screwdriver or something to get in between here and knock these bearing caps apart. However, the proper tool is a drift. Now, before I take any of these rod end caps off, I'm going to talk about some best practices. Normally, I would start the rear of the motor with a set of punches or numbering blocks and number the rods all the way down the motor from 1 through 8. I have a nice container system, so I have 8 containers in a row. I put the 8 rods, 16 bolt or nuts, and 8 rod caps all in the same container, and that keeps me organized. And it also keeps me from having to punch the bottom of my rod ends. So I'm going to take my small diameter punch, and I'm going to grab one of these nuts. I'm going to put it on the end of this bolt right here. So I have about half the threads threaded, and there's still a gap between the bottom of the bolt and the top of the bearing cap. Take my my punch here, put it on the top of the stud, and there. Looks like our rod end came off without the bearing. The bearing stayed on the crankshaft here. Man. So there we go. There is our end cap bearing. Looks to be in relatively decent shape. Just a little bit of scoring, obviously some wear through on the bottom here. But that's to be expected. It's a high mileage old motor. So I'm gonna go ahead and finish these off. As you can see on the number 1 rod and piston, it's already been removed. There is some knurling on the top of these rod studs that holds the end cap in place once you torque it. So when we're hitting the end of these studs with a hammer, what we're doing is breaking ourselves out of that knurling so we can slide that end cap off. Alright, now that we have all 8 pistons and rods removed, the crank turns really smooth, really easy. I have loosened all the main cap bolts, lowered their torque. I'm going to go ahead and take them off the impact. Stand by 1 minute. With 4 of the 5 main caps removed, we're left with the final rear main cap and rear main seal. So it's kind of a bear to take off. So what I've done is I've threaded the oil pump bolt back into it, and I'm going to take my soft plastic body hammer here, and I'm going to tap main bolt, or this oil pump bolt, kind of in all directions. Looks like the crank wants to come out the seal, so we're just going to go ahead and pull the whole crank out with the rear main still attached. Oh, so I made a mistake. I forgot that I am working on a Gen 5 block here. So the rear main seal is one piece. So whoever installed it, which I assume is GM, did put some sealant on there. So we pulled the crank, rear main seal, and rear main bearing cap all at once. So this is the bottom of the block, everything removed. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull all the miscellaneous coolant plugs, oil galley plugs, we're going to pull the oil filter mount, so on and so forth, and get this puppy ready for hot tank. Thanks for watching.